first round, that's usually, that's the most hyped round. That's where everyone gets the most excited. But when it comes to the Bengals, it's kind of the most boring round. I feel like where the Bengals are going to improve the most at is going to be the remainder of the draft, not so much the first round, as wild as that sounds. The first round pick should be your most impactful one.
Yeah.
That may not be the case this season, correct?
No, I certainly don't think so, especially for where the Bengals are picking at. And this is kind of the conversation we had yesterday about the NFL draft and why this is viewed as, not the best draft. Because outside of, the top few players, which doesn't even seem to have a general consensus. Yeah. You have consensuses within each position more or less towards the top, but in terms of who the number one overall player in this class is, there doesn't seem to be an overall consensus. It's Abdul Carter, it's Travis Hunter, it's Armand Membou, it's Will Campbell. It really is all across the board, though they are all good players. I think there's less of a discrepancy between player 5 and player 10 than there is between player 50 and player 70.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration to prove the point here, but when you get into day 2 and day 3, you're picking between very similar players in the 3rd round and the 5th round of this year's draft. If you're willing to break some of the organizational molds, talking about the Bengals here, and you can get out of your comfort zone on age or height and weight measurements in some spots, you can hit on some really awesome production profiles later in this draft for guys that can contribute to this team right away. And that's what the Bengals are going to have to do. If you look over the last few years, how have they operated? They've operated with drafting a year in advance.
Yeah.
They drafted Myles Murphy to fill a hole a year in advance at edge rusher. They drafted Dax Hill to replace Jesse Bates a year in advance at free safety. Obviously, those haven't worked out for the Bengals, but the thought process was there in terms of, getting ahead of certain problems for this team. Bengals can't operate like that anymore. We know they have holes on defense. We know they have a hole at guard. We know they have a hole at running back too. They have 6 picks in this draft. I think they probably have more than 6 holes. So you have to hit on 4 to 5 of those 6 picks to be meaningful starters in week 1.
Yeah.
And I think this is a draft that really does help the Bengals with doing that. I'm going to be very interested to see which way they go with positions. I think something that does help the Bengals a lot this year, we know they don't need a quarterback. We know they don't need a wide receiver. And as long as, the last time I checked, Trey Hendrickson's still on this team. So I don't know if they need a number 1 edge rusher as of right now. And that's what we were talking about to kick off this show. Those are the sexy positions that this draft is lacking. So that helps the Bengals. Honestly, for all of us in Cincinnati, we should be the biggest Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, and Jalen Milroe fans in the entire world.
Yeah.
Because if those 4 players go before 17, you have a lot of offensive linemen and pass rushers falling on down. So that's the way Bengals fans should operate throughout this draft. Throw a party every time a wide receiver comes off the board, every time a quarterback comes off the board, because that just means better and better players at the positions we need are falling down. I think there's a lot of depth at interior offensive line, what the Bengals absolutely need a starter at. I think there's a lot of depth at edge rusher and interior defensive line where the Bengals need starters at. They'd be fine taking any of those positions in round 1 and getting a really good player in round 2 or round 3. So there's a lot of different ways the Bengals can go.
Can you go wrong? Like, what's a pick that they could take with 17 where you're like, you know what, that stunk. That's garbage.
Casey and I talked through this today before the show. I think there's 3 players that we landed on that would be bad picks for the Bengals at 17. 2 that we've talked about pretty extensively on the show, Shamar Stewart and Michael Williams. Shamar Stewart from A&M, Michael Williams from Georgia. 2 guys that just didn't produce in college. They have great athletic profiles, and they played at marquee schools. They're big-time prospects, but Shamar Stewart had 4.5 sacks. Michael Williams right around there as well in his college career. Just not what you want to see. Reminds me too much of Myles Murphy. You're banking on too much production there, in my opinion. I'd like a guy that can come in and be an impact guy right now, someone that racked up the sacks in college. And the third one, going over to the offensive line, Josh Connerly from Oregon, a guy that, in my opinion at least, is more of a true tackle than anything else, and they would obviously try him at guard. I don't know if that would be the best way to go. I'm very, very fine with taking a tackle, moving him into guard in the first round, but I would lean more towards the Kelvin Banks of the world than the Josh Connerlys. I think there's a lot of really good defensive players that would be there that I would personally prefer over a Connerly, and then switching positions. That's a tough pill for me to swallow in the first round.
What about your guy, Tyler Booker?
I love him. I absolutely love him. I think he is the top guard in this draft class, including a lot of those switches from offensive tackle to offensive guard. I think after Tyler Booker, it's about 6 to 8 offensive tackle converts before you get to the next guard. But I wouldn't take Tyler Booker in the first round. I know he has the film for it. I know he has the multi-year starter for it. But Casey, what doesn't he have? Your favorite thing in the entire world.
RAS score.
He doesn't have a very
profile.
good RAS score. One of the least athletic offensive linemen in this class, and that does scare me, pairing him with Orlando Brown, who, not very athletic, and Amarius Mims, who kind of bucked that trend last year, but certainly not the way I think the Bengals are going and building this lineup. I do think if the Bengals take an offensive lineman early, they're going to be looking more big picture to replace Orlando Brown than anything else. You're taking someone that can play offensive guard for 2 years at a high level and then hopefully bump out to be your left tackle of the next 5 after Orlando Brown does retire or move on. So I think that the Bengals certainly wouldn't go wrong with Tyler Booker, but I would much prefer him at 49, which I don't think he's going to get there. But I would be a little bit upset if they took him at 17.
Who would be the most pleasantly surprised, fall that you would expect not to be a Bengal based on the current projections, but could be a Bengal based on, who knows, maybe they're taking wide receivers and quarterbacks more frequently than we would have thought, or something else goes wrong in the draft, teams are trading away, yada, yada, yada. Whatever that may be, who's a perceived top 12, top 15 guy that could fall to the Bengals if things went perfectly our way?
I mean, it's the guy that I've hung my hat on since we started this draft season. It's still James Pierce Jr. for me. He met with the Falcons at pick 15. He met with the 49ers at pick 11. Both teams obviously picking ahead of the Bengals that have a need at edge rusher. What he was able to do at Tennessee for 3 years at only 21 and a half years old, I think that's such a perfect match for the Bengals. The only reason he would be there at 17 is those character concerns.
Yeah.
And I understand why Bengals fans would be hesitant to take a player with character concerns at 17 because we haven't historically done the best with character concern players. But if you go through your meeting with him, if you do feel confidence there, that's a college profile that I would just be over the moon adding to this team. Our friends over at Gridiron Grading, they came on and did a show with us at Chatterbox Bengals earlier last season. They have James Pierce Jr. as the 7th player on their board overall.
Oh my.
So that tells you a little bit about how great he is as a player, a really, really exciting pass rusher that should translate to the NFL with relative ease. That's my dream pick for the Bengals. I don't think he would be there. And if he is, maybe we should have more serious concerns about those character issues because I don't think his profile leads him outside of the top 15.
All right, off the bench. Presented by UDF, again, the draft a week from today. And again, the Pierce guy, you talked about him going back all the way to the middle of the season.
I've loved him. I've loved him for a
bouncing
long time.
all up and down a little bit, too. What is going on out there?
I don't know.
I believe they're hitting maybe the bird with the hammer.
Building the casket
I
for the
don't-
bird.
It
I don't-
won't die.
I don't fully understand what's going on out there, but it seems to be loud. Casey, who's your dream guys? Are you locked in with Jacob here or no?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit because I got 2, but it works because I like both Campbells a lot.
Yeah.
I like Will Campbell a lot, and I like Jihaad Campbell a lot. I think if either of those guys fell to the Bengals at 17, that they should be running up to the podium to take either one of them. Jihaad Campbell's a linebacker, which is not a position that's looked –
Makes the Jermaine Pratt decision easier.
Yeah, it makes the Jermaine Pratt decision a lot easier. It's not a position that gets a lot of love, especially in the first round. It's seen as the running back or the guard or the positions that you don't usually take in the first round. But Jihaad Campbell, he would be able to give you a little juice in the pass rush department as well as being just an all-around great linebacker. And you pair that with Logan Wilson, I think you got the best duo in all of football, I think. And then Will Campbell, his issue is just arm length, and if teams don't like that, there's a chance he could fall, but he's the best offensive lineman prospect in this draft. So
Let me ask you this. We've had a pretty chalk sports year so far.
Yeah.
How chalk is this draft going to be? Are there going to be any surprises? Usually there's one draft night surprise. Michael Penix, I know, was a pretty big surprise last year. Do you think there's any of that this year?
I'm pretty confident in the first 5 picks of this draft.
Okay.
In where they're going. I don't think there's much question about the first 5 picks in this draft. So I'm going to say no. I do think that intrigue comes in at 6. I think that's the ceiling for Shedeur Sanders. I think he could go there to the Raiders. I know they made the move for Geno Smith. I know they extended him, but I don't think it would be a bad idea for the team that drafts Shedeur Sanders not to put him on the field in week 1. I think that would be setting him up for failure.
Yeah.
So going to Las Vegas would be perfect for him. I also think he could go 9 to the Saints. I also think both those teams could not take him, and that's where the free fall starts, and I think the intrigue would come in. Maybe we're talking about 21 to the Steelers as the next spot. I don't know for sure. Certainly opens the door for maybe a team like the Browns to trade back up into the first, take him a little later than the 2nd overall pick. It's going to be interesting. I think that's the biggest storyline. people are watching
Okay.
is where does Shedeur Sanders fall? Casey mentioned it there. Will Campbell, no doubt the best player in this class if you didn't have a ruler in your hands. But as soon as they found out his arms were a little bit shorter than they'd like, he's now no longer draftable. I always find that funny, right?
T-Rex arms.
Yeah, he starts at tackle for 3 years in the SEC. He's first team All SEC 3 times, first team All American twice. But his arms are too short now that we got a ruler around. So
Okay.
I hate that, but he could certainly fall. A lot of intrigue there. Maybe with pick 4, the Patriots going a different direction than Will Campbell, going with maybe Armand Membu, the tackle from Missouri. He had an unbelievable offseason, tested at a 99.9 RAS score, so and I guess 9.99 out of 10. One of the most athletic offensive linemen of all time. So should be interesting to see what goes there. That'd be very cool to see him kind of fly up boards. And maybe Will Campbell does fall down to us. That would be a dream come true because that's an All-American or all-pro guard right there for sure.
For the Bengals specifically, what do you think the position groups that are going to be hit this year? You have 6 picks as of right now. You have 6 picks. I imagine you said yesterday a running back is going to be in play.
Certainly.
I like to think a tight end is going to be in play.
I think that's very dependent on how the board falls.
Okay.
I think
So in your mind right now, what would, like, 2 offensive linemen, 2 edge rushers? What are we looking at?
I would comfortably say 2 pass rushers. Ideally, I'm going with an interior and then an edge rusher.
Okay.
But I'm not going to, constrain the Bengals to that. If edge rushers fall and you can get 2 guys, one that's maybe a little bigger, and you think you can play him inside, I have no issue with that. I would say 2 pass rushers for sure. And I would love to get 2 linemen. I think it will only be 1.
Okay.
I think it's going to be 1 offensive lineman in this draft. And then I think a position a lot of Bengals fans are overlooking for 17, but most importantly throughout the rest of the draft is defensive back.
Yeah.
I think corner and safety are both absolutely on the board at 17 for the Bengals, with Nicky Manwari from South Carolina, Malachi Starks from Georgia, Will Johnson from Michigan, Jahdae Barron from Texas. These guys certainly fall right into that pick 17 range. I would not be shocked nor upset if the Bengals went with secondary early in this draft. I certainly think they will later. Guys like Xavier Watts, who played for Al Golden at Notre Dame at safety. Guys like Kevin Winston, who fell down the board pretty drastically because of an injury this year. A very, very good player. I think there's a lot of depth in the DB class here, and I think the Bengals will definitely take advantage of that as well.